Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everyone joining in. Welcome to a session about how India can be future ready. As we know, over the last 30 years of the economic reforms of July 4th, 1991, India has come a long way. And while much has been done, much is yet to be done. I have the honor, joy, and pleasure to welcome my guest, Mr. Mohandas Pai.
Thank
I
you.
think many of you all know Mohan, but I'll give a very brief introduction. Mohan is the man I go to whenever I want to feel great about life, because his constant energy, his perpetual smile makes me very optimistic about the future whenever I have doubts. So that's to me the best introduction that I can give. But having said that, we know that Mohan has done his CA, a law degree, and of course, joined Infosys and made sure that Infosys had the best disclosures, the best annual reports, and helped build a fantastic enterprise. Now, of course, he's chairman with the Manipal Education Foundation, RN Capital, and he has two really inspirational sons who are running their own entity, 3.14. So, which of course, for those of you who know, that's a play on the word pi. So pi is 3.1472. So that's pi 3.14 capital. So with that brief welcome, because we've given more detailed bios, Mohan, thank you for joining us. And I'd like to ask, the first question to you: where were you prior to the economic reforms? What was Mohandas Pai doing in July 1990, June 1991, before the big announcement of the reforms?
Well, I was running a finance company, leasing company called Prakash Leasing Limited. Life those days was very sedate. Nothing much happened. We were captives of the licensed Kota Raj. We were like the caged tiger in that famous Economist, front page. And we didn't know it because we didn't know any other world. We were born into the world of the licensed Kota Raj, where government decided everything, where you had to go to government to get approval. And Delhi was captured by some set of people. And you didn't know better, and you waited, and the life went on. The sun rose in the morning and set in the evening. So I was running the finance company. Growth was fast for us, 30-40%, but very slow. So suddenly in 1991, we had this crisis, and then India opened up. But Ajit, let me give some data, Ajit. In 1947, when India got a freedom, India was the biggest economy in Asia because we are a war economy, and Great Britain owed us 1.5 billion pounds for taking our services and goods for the war effort. China was destroyed by the civil war. Japan was destroyed. Southeast Asia was destroyed by the war. In Asia, we were the biggest economy, remember, and the richest economy. 1950, we had, republic with the constitution being in place, and the first government of the day brought in policies to set up the license control Raj, whereby private capital was a bad name, and private capital was not encouraged. And so I think we were victims of that particular place, and we had the large public sector. So we grew at 3.5% from 1950 to 1980. Population grew at 2.5%. Per capita income grew at 1%. From the richest economy in Asia, we became the poorest by 1980. In 1980, we started opening up. 80 to 90, we grew at 5.5%. Population grew at 2.25%. We saw a little bit of growth, but our foreign debt went up from $20 billion at the beginning of the 80s to $80 billion by the end of the 80s. And in 1991, we had foreign exchange for 2 weeks of imports. And we are in a dire crisis. We had to pledge our gold, get $450 million, etc. $450 million. Remember, India's results today are $650 million. And then we opened up, and that opening up has been remarkable. From that point onwards, our GDP grew from 275 billion to $2.93 trillion by March 2020. And we grew at 8.5% a year in dollar terms. Population grew at 1.5%, and per capita income grew at 7%. And now, of course, we had COVID. I do hope by 2032 we'll be a $10 trillion economy. So see these three phases, and then you can imagine what it was. It took us nearly 30 years to come to where we are and see this high growth phase, and to understand that we are free economically, we can take many decisions, and government has no business to be in business. Gandhiji famously, suppose I said, being a Gujarati, this desh mein sarkar vyapari hai, us desh mein janta bikari hai. We have become bikaris between 1950 to 1980.
So let's just sort of, I love the fact that you throw data. In fact, before you joined, I told my colleague Subbu, I said, Mohan's going to throw a lot of data at us. He's a walking machine for data, the data bank, AI and everything with it. But, sort of looking a bit back in history, if you will, from the 1991 till 2020, what changes have you witnessed, have you seen, for example, in technology, in entrepreneurship, the desire to get a job versus the desire to be an entrepreneur, the search for education, higher education? What changes have you witnessed since 1991?
Well, let me give the example of Infosys to give the change. 1991, India exported $50 million of software. This year, we'll export $170 billion. There were maybe 25,000 people employed in software for exports. This year, we'll have 50 lakh people. And there were no listed companies. Now, the listed companies are worth $400 billion. Of the top 10 software service companies by market value in the world, 5 are Indian, top 3 are Indian. Of the 2.8 million employees in the top 10, 2 million are Indians. Of the 6 million employees in software in America, 1 million are Indians. Out of the 5 million, 2.5 million work for American companies. Out of 8.5 million employees in software in America, 3.5 million are Indians. This all happened because of the opening up. What did it mean? One, we could import computers without paying 170% duty. We could travel abroad without standing in queue and getting $8 from RBI or in the airport, and RBI telling us how much we can go and where we can travel, etc. We could list our equity in the stock market without going to the control of capital issues. All right. And we could grow rapidly because the capital markets opened up, foreign investors came in. Morgan Stanley had one time 13% of the equity of Infosys. And remember, the total money raised was 13.5 crores. So out of 13.5 crores, they must have put in 2 crores, and the 2 crores will be worth $13 billion today. 2 crores will be worth nearly 1 lakh crore today, right? I mean, it's incredible if you look at what value. Absolutely, and then, of course, we could grow and everything else. And, there was a sense of freedom, Majid.
Yeah.
We never knew freedom.
Like we
never knew economic
up.
freedom.
Yeah,
it opened up. You opened eyes and we could believe that we can grow. We can do things. Dhirubhai Ambani taught us scale. He started in 1978, but he taught us scale. Maybe he broke a few rules in telling us scale, but you're the first Indian to show that we could have scale in this country. We never knew scale in this country. It's all license quota. You produce one vehicle more than license. You're all put in jail and all that. And all that was gone. It took 5-6 years of people to understand how to be free, but then everything started off and it built on itself. And for education, those days you're producing maybe 25,000 engineers. Now we produce 10 lakh engineers. And those days, maybe the total students in college, maybe 5-6 lakh. Today we have 3.6 crore young people in college. I mean, it's a different world today compared to what that world was. Right.
So if you now look at the next 20 years, right? India has to grow maybe from roughly $2.73 trillion where we are. If we have to get per capita incomes up to $10,000 per capita, $14,000 per capita, we have to go towards being a 14 trillion economy, 18 trillion economy, that sort of number, looking out for the next 20 years. So what is it that India needs to do to be future ready, in your opinion, to get to those large numbers of 14 trillion, 18 trillion in terms of total GDP, so we can break out of being a low income economy and moving very clearly into the middle income economy path?
Adit, I believe it's going to be a very difficult journey compared to what we have been through the last 30 years. For a very important reason. Okay, the world is aging. Consumption will not grow at the same pace globally. China is a very big competitor who can dump. And our time at the table, in my view, has passed when you could really grow rapidly. So we got to do something special. And India today has very, very deep challenges. which we have to solve, which I see the government solving in a way, but not in the way it should. All right. So let me talk about the challenges and what we ought to do to really get going. The biggest challenge we have in this country is that 43% of our population depends on 16% of GDP agriculture, growing at 3 to 3.5% a year. That means 57% of people depend on industry and services, which are growing at 7 to 8% a year. So the income differential between people on the land and people of the land is expanding very, very rapidly. And we have to bridge the gap. And that's why we see the income of people on agriculture is about, I think, 65,000 rupees. Income on land is 1,65,000, and income of people on in services 2,25,000, 2,30,000 rupees. So the differential is very, very wide.
Yeah.
And if you look at the per capita income of this country is nearly 1,45,000, but UP is 69,000 and Bihar is 49,000. They are 30% of India, right? And West Bengal is 135,000. They're way behind. So we see this divergence in economic growth between the north and the south. We see divergence in fertility. In the south, fertility is 1.7, 1.7 for fertile women. In the north is about 2.4, 2.5. India has come to 2.0. So we see more young people coming up in the north. In the south, the gross enrollment rate in education is about maybe 35. In the north is about 23, 24. An indifferent quality of education, right? So human capital, financial capital, everything is very different from the north to the south. And there's a massive, migration from the north to the south in this country, leading to a lot of discontent all over the place. So we have to shift people from agriculture into industry and services. I think that's very important. And for that to do, we need to have particular strategies. The second important thing which we need is no country has grown without urbanization. Okay, we are supposed to be 34, 35% urban, maybe 40% urban. The world is 52% urban. China is 57% urban. We have 7,000 small towns which have to be developed. And somehow government still recently had this romantic notion of India living in villages. India lived in villages in 1947. Today, nobody wants to live in a village. No farmer wants his child to do farming. No farmer wants to live in a village. They want to come to the nice, shiny towns. And our towns are not nice and shiny. You know that what problem? We have not done urban renewal work. So we have to invest in urban India because, Ajit, urbanization is concentration of human activity. Concentration of human activity creates specialization. Specialization increases productivity. That increases income. So we got to develop the smaller towns along with the bigger towns. So people from the village can come there and stay there. We got to create jobs. How do you create jobs? You can't have all these great unwashed masses into software or in investment banking and become like an Ajit Dayal, right? You can't do that because you have to get labor-intensive industries. India is the only country which has incentivized capital for jobs and not labor. Capital brings in automation, whereas labor-intensive like garments. We were the largest garment exporter 40 years back. Now China exports 250 billion, we are 25, and Bangladesh exports 40 billion. They don't grow cotton, but they export more than us because of bad policies, right? So we have to make sure that we create labor-intensive industry in the smaller towns and shift to improve productivity. And then we got to create the road network and the port network to reduce supply chain costs from 14% of GDP to 7 to 8%. We already got GST, we're building the road infrastructure. So there are big ticket items that have to be done. And the last point, which is very important, which Prime Minister Modi is doing, and you must give him good credit. We must make sure every Indian has the necessities of life. Food on the table, a roof for the hood, a roof for the head, a water in the tap, power in the switch, a gas stove in the house, a mobile phone, an internet connection, money in the bank, with a bank account, health insurance, and maybe education for the children. Now with all this, all the things are doing, people will have the necessities. When people have the bare necessities, they become agents of economic change and they will grow. So I think we are seeing these challenges become very evident because of differential growth.
So can I just jump in there? I mean, while all this GDP and this growth is happening, what happens to this, we're now living in a world where there's more scrutiny on society in terms of, carbon emissions, climate change, gender equality, pay scale differential. There's a whole bunch of focus. And, in India, we've had many inherent problems for a long time, for centuries, start from the caste system, and they've all broken barriers, but there is still a long, long way to go. So where does the social sector And where does that social impact, including the climate impact, which is a subset in my view of social, where does that fit in your view, in this whole growth phase that we need to give people, basically to enrich people and to make their lives better?
Ajit, we cannot adopt Western models for India's needs. Too many of the people
Right.
working in the social sector are funded by the West and carry on their model, which is not going to work. Okay. For example, even though we are possibly the third or fourth largest consumer of energy, our per capita consumption is so very low. We're just not consuming the energy required for every person to have a good life. Yet we are badgered globally that you're doing this, blah, blah, blah. We still need to enhance the consumption of energy. We can't have this model. For example, remember the midday meal scheme that we run in Akshay Patra has done more to bring children back to school than anything else that anybody could do at such a low cost. We need to develop our own models to make sure that India becomes a part of what the globe has to be. Now, to combat climate change, India has a fantastic model. As a civilization, we believe in taking from nature what we need for our survival and not more. Our civilization is not based on the conquest of nature, conquest of nature's creatures. So we want to bring back our social ethos where, like Gandhiji said, the world has enough for everybody's need, not for everybody's greed. We got to reduce wasteful consumption. Frugality has to be a part of what we do. And frugality means recycling. Indians recycle whatever they buy. They don't throw it away. So that kind of a culture of recycling, repair has to be there while we grow as a consumer economy. And we also have to be very frugal in the use of energy and not do what the West did. So we have got to develop new models. We need more alternate energy, more energy from the sun, etc. The next thing what we need is to make sure that we create the basic necessities of life for all citizens, and that no NGO can do. Let me be very clear. No NGO, nobody can do. You can do some big pieces. You can't transform it. But government is doing it now by making sure that necessities of life are given to everybody. I think that's a very important initiative. And the third, we got to create a system whereby people can get a lot of things that they want and become independent economic agents. Let me give you an example, Ajit. We're starting an experiment in Bangalore where in the next 1 year, we're going to do DBT for 1,000 families, give them 3,000 to 5,000 rupees a month for 5 years to the woman of the house and say, okay, go live your life and we'll help you. And here's the money, do what you want. Because human beings are agents of change. So we got to work on new programs where you don't give free rations, you don't give free this, which you make that individual a supplicant. Rather, you empower them to take economic decisions and make sure that children get a decent education and create opportunities. So we got to create new models now that the necessity of life will be given to most people in possibly in the next 2 or 3 years. Most people means 95% of population. The last 5% is going to be very, very, very different. So we got to rethink and reimagine the social sector and work together to create new models which can empower Indians.
Yeah. So, I mean, you spoke about the fact that NGOs can't get through. I remember in a previous conversation years ago, you had told me something which was quite startling, and obviously it's intuitively realized it's true, that for you, and you spoke about it before, that human capital is the key, right? The ability of the human to take things forward, you give them the opportunity, they'll take things forward. And what Akshay Patra has done, I mean, a fantastic effort that you started 20 years ago plus, is to provide that midday meal. And you told me this, that if a child is not nourished well till the age of 5 or 7 years old, it has an impact on the brain for the rest of the person's life, the ability to learn for the rest of their life. So, it was at the end of the day, it was an NGO like yours, Akshay Patra, which came in and, like you correctly pointed out, served more meals than the government. So doesn't it mean that the government can't really do everything? Not that it's to blame, but it's just a huge problem. And you need the NGOs. And, while you may or may not adopt a foreign model, foreign capital, if it comes without any strings attached, is good. But there's a lot of local capital now with people like yourselves, yourselves, the Premji Foundation, the Tatas, so many others in life, and new generation people too, have started funding NGOs. So doesn't that mean two things? That A, you need capital towards the NGOs, and B, you need the NGOs, because the government really can't solve the problem on its own.
No, I'm not saying we don't need the NGOs, but I don't believe NGOs alone can solve the problem. It has to be a public-private partnership.
Yeah.
For example, the government funds 40-45% of the cost of the meal for Akshay Patra, so we're able to grow. So the public-private partnership along with the government. So we got to put in private money through NGOs in large governmental programs where we can really make a very big difference. Because what NGOs can bring to the table is an execution capability at the local level, which very often government cannot because of their own systems and large scale. The last mile is where I think NGOs do very well, and many of them are grow up big. Second, we need some of these big NGOs to do well. For example, Premji Foundation, they could be having, they're the largest corpus in India, maybe 35, 40, 45 billion dollars. If you look at what it is, and what do you think they spend? 1,200 crores, it's peanuts. All the people who committed to Bill Gates to say 50% of what wealth will be given away. How much are they actually given away? Hardly anything. So we got to ask these people, why are you not giving away your wealth? Why are you not doing it in your own lifetime? You made commitments, spend it. We got to spend 50, 60, 70, 80,000 crore, 1 lakh crore a year to help people. And one of the ways that people can do, Ajit, to you and anybody else is, we have 8 crore taxpayers, 8 crore, okay? Imagine 5 crore taxpayer adopting one poor family. One poor family is 5 people. So you adopt one family, give them 3,000 to 4,000, 5,000 rupees a month, just like that in the bank account, transfer the money for 5 years, 10 years, and see the magic, right? So what does it mean? It doesn't mean that you do large programs. You empower the individual to lead lives. Because, Ajit, look at this. Ajit, I want to ask you, what is poverty? Poverty is a lack of purchasing power. Now, I got assets, I got purchasing power. I got employment, I got purchasing power. I got skill, I got purchasing power. But if I am very poor, I don't have many skills, I'm left behind uneducated, I don't have much purchasing power because we are a labor surplus country. So you got to help them get skills. You got to help them get some money, keep body and soul together and make you confident. You can't be a beaten human being at the mercy of the government sector for giving dose, etc., because that is self-defeating. So to me, the biggest program is if 5 crore households say, I'm going to adopt one household, or one crore taxpayers say, I'm going to adopt 5 households and give them and spend 25,000 rupees a month. Give them 5,000 rupees a month for maybe 5 years, 10 years. Then we can do many things. So in this way, we need innovative ways of doing it. Because remember, Ajit, every human being is smart. Every human being knows to live. We are survivors. We survived on this planet for hundreds and thousands of years. They know how to negotiate. If you give money to a mother will know what to do. She'll go buy food for her children. She'll buy medicine. She'll put them in a good school. She'll take care of it. She knows how to negotiate. You don't have to give her food. You don't have to go buy something for her. You don't do anything. She'll do it. Why? She's got purchasing power. It is purchasing power. Purchasing power is concentrated, and that's the way economies are. So we got to think of new models where social action is there among large number of people, or a smaller number of people do larger things in a way where you empower the individual. The time for empowerment has come. So we got to work with government and we got to try new models.
Absolutely. I mean, what you're saying is very true, because within economics, there's a phrase called propensity to consume. What is the desire to consume? And obviously, the poorer you are, the less money you have, your propensity to consume for the extra 100 rupees you get will be 100%. Whereas if you're a rich person and you get the extra 100 rupees, you're probably going to shop outside India somewhere and not do anything in India. So your propensity to consume, and that's great for economics, right? The fact that you have a huge base of people at the lower end of the economic ladder, they get incomes, then they can spend a lot, and that can propel the economy towards the trillions that you wish it to be over time. So that's absolutely correct. But just to move a little bit towards, what you spoke about, and about this special program for taxpayers. So we've had the CSR from the government 2014, where companies are supposed to give 2% of their profits. What was your view as someone who's been involved with the government policy and in the social sector? What is your view of CSR? Has it succeeded? Does it need to be modified? What's the pathway forward for CSR?
Ajit, I was honestly against compulsion by law. But now I'm convinced my view was wrong. for a very important reason, which may not come as an insight to possibly you and me. It may not, maybe me, but may not be you. And the reason is very clear. We are creatures of free markets. We want freedom. We believe everybody will take the right decision, etc. But you know, Ajit, we live in a society. The divide between the rich and the poor is expanding. There's a large number of people who are bereft of any help, and government is not able to help them for whatever reason, or it doesn't reach them. So there's a deep sense of frustration and anger that builds up. Now, government and our legislators and political leaders who are in touch with them possibly understand this message. They have to be seen as compelling these rich, big corporates to spend 2% of profits to help the poor. And that message that we have compelled them, we have done them, gives confidence to people who vote for them to say, yes, our leaders are doing it and doing it. And they force the corporate to spend 2%. Now, you and I believe corporates should voluntarily spend 2%, 3%. And they should do it for their own good. But that is not the logic accepted by the great majority of corporates. Because there's so many of them, they're vanity projects, they do all kinds of things and etc. They want name and all that using the company money. But now I think the 20,000 crores a year, there've been compulsion, it's changed behavior. And I think it's created a lot of good, even though compulsion is not something possibly you and I would agree. So I think it's been very good. He sent a message to society. He's helped many things. But what we need now is large scale programs. Why don't you do a national DBT program? Okay. Yeah. Let us say that for all the people who are in the BPL list or whatever it is, you have a DBT program where we work through a portal started by you, Ajit, where you identify the poor people. I say, I'm adopting 100 people. I'll pay you, 5 lakhs a month for those 100 people, 5 lakhs. Okay. I'll pay you 5 lakhs. I must get 100% tax deduction. I pay you and you distribute to them directly to the DBT. And the government has oversight about that to make sure it actually goes to people who are there. Correct? Why don't you do the large scale program? So I'm just saying, we got to learn to be innovative about empowering people and remove the waste in the transmission and do something new. And maybe that can be part of what we do. I once suggested to a very large foundation that why don't you adopt a state and work with the government to make sure that everybody has medical insurance. And for 1 crore people, you maybe give 500 rupees each, 500 crores a year, because it can 1 crore, it can cover 5 members, 5 crore people, right? In a family. Maybe the insurance will be 1,500 rupees for 5 lakhs and government can give 1,000 and you give 500 and you work with the government to monitor to make sure everybody has access to health. So we got to think of these large scale programs and many of the large companies should do this large scale impact. You see, all of them do small things. We got to do a large to solve the fundamental issues of income for people, of let us say skill for people, large scale, health for people, and primary education.
Right. Well, that's great because actually this is part of a series that Winnie and Nishant from Helper NGO have created, which is to get Helper NGO to HYNGO, which is to give small amounts of money to large number of people in society. That's what the database has been built for. But your point is correct. Identify the individual families, use the stack that we built up in the country, the tech stack, and move money directly to people. Let's just move a little bit towards individuals. From the 1990s till 2020, there was a certain kind of skill set or education program that worked to make individuals ready for the India of the post-1991 reforms. Now with technology changing the landscape dramatically in India, and again, the world's focus on carbon footprint and emissions and gender equality, what should entrepreneurs looking to set up businesses? And equally important, what should employees, engineers, doctors, whoever, what should professionals be? What should they do to get themselves ready, to make themselves future ready for that India for the next 20 years? What skill sets do they need to build and sharpen?
Well, Ajit, we got our education in an era of low growth and slow moving society. We are part of the industrial revolution. Now we're in the midst of digital revolution. Look at the speed of change. 68 years back, to go to 50 million consumers, the airline industry took 68 years. Okay. To go to 50 million people on the internet, it took 7 years. Pokemon took 19 days. Arogya Setu took 13 days. So the speed of change is accelerated dramatically. The world changes very fast. Innovation cycles are shrunk from 36 months to 18 months. Second important thing, we are in the midst of the digital revolution. The industrial revolution supply chain is gone. Today, out of 7.8 billion people on the planet, about 5.5 billion are on the internet. They have a mobile phone connection. So they do business on the internet. And the internet models mean that technology is the front end and all other things are the back end. So you have access to global markets, global things, and many new innovation, many things can come and suddenly scale up before you know what it is. So when the speed of change is accelerated, your life is not going to be the same. Your life is going to be disrupted. Business are going to be disrupted. Everything is going to be disrupted for the entrepreneur, for others. So what are the qualities you should have to succeed in this digital era? To my mind, we must go back to fundamentals. We must have curiosity. We must have a curious mind. Why do things work? What happens? What do we see before us? How do you reorient ourselves? What are the new things coming up? We must have a curiosity and the passion, energy to be curious. And that is what will make us success. Second, we must have a problem-solving attitude. That means we must know how to solve problems by looking at problems, analyzing them, looking at data, and coming out with 3 or 4 options, choosing the one which gives the best decision, right? So there's a way of problem solving. We must be problem solvers. That means our mind is thinking, our eyes are seeing, and we can solve problems, and we can be very imaginative and creative, because creativity and imagination are going to be the 3 attributes for successful people. Look at all successful entrepreneurs. Creativity and imagination is important. And the third, we must develop the kind of soft skill like communication, articulation, etc., so that there is gravitas. It's not possible everybody, at least we can be more communicative. The American young youth are much more communicative, because they're brought up in a consumer economy than us, where many of us are very quiet, we just keep quiet, etc. But you must communicate, you must have a proper body language, etc. And the next thing what you must do is, we must learn the use of technology and adopt technology, not go into depth of technology, the creation of technology. For that you require specialists. At least use technology to make our lives more productive, because there's so many tools that can be used to make our lives more productive. And if you look at young people today, 15, 16, they all use technology to live much better, much more than us, right? Then they're able to do things much better, get good deals, etc. And the last point is, how do we live in a globalized world, bereft of barriers? Today, after COVID, Ajit, you can do work for a Swedish company and an Indian company at the same time, because work has become global. Everybody works with a platform. You're not wedded to an office, wedded to a country, wedded to a region, wedded to a language. Everything has become global. And there's so many opportunities opening up, because jobs are coming to India in a very large way in future, because the field is getting leveled by the use of the internet and everything else. So you can work for many, many people, and the cost of labor is coming down. And that means, the opportunities for you are there. You must capitalize on opportunities. And for that, curiosity, problem-solving attitude, good communication skills, learning to use technology, and looking at the globe as a stage where you can play and use the new opportunities come up will be very good. These are the things, if you have these attributes, either as an entrepreneur or as an employee, I think you'll succeed wherever you are.
So does that 3-year undergrad, bachelor's in India, or 2 years MBA, 5-year engineering, do you have to change that whole system to make it more practical and shorten the learning period? Is that something?
No, Ajit, I wouldn't go for shortening the learning period, because people have to grow up. Okay. 18, when you go to college, it's a growing up period for you. You have to socialize, you got to meet people, you got to grow up, you got to understand. It takes time, Ajit. You can't hasten it. It's not dumping something and downloading into your hard disk, right? You got to experience it, you got to understand, you got to rationalize, you got to create your network. It takes time. I don't want to shorten that process. But what we should do is bring in flexibility in the process. That's what the new education policy has done. For the first time, you can have a 1 year, you can have a 4-year degree, get away after 1 year, you get a certificate. After 2 years, you get a diploma. 3 years, you get a degree, then honors, etc. You can collect all the credits and get it together, go out, work, come back, go back. So you got flexibility. And then you can rearrange your curriculum to get credits from all kinds of universities everywhere else. So I think all those things are important. The framework has been kept as brilliant, actually brilliant, and right for the digital era. The post-COVID era is very right. And I think that's very, very good what has to be done. And to my mind, that is what is going to be. We got to use that. But to use it is difficult. How do you create choice for students? How do you make it more student-centric? So the students understand what is required. For example, you go into engineering, you're forced to go into mechanical, you want computer science. Can you do computer science tomorrow? Why not? You can do a computer science program from Coursera or somewhere else, right? Because so many efforts are available. So you should be able to mix and match and not be limited by the menu on offer.
Right.
So it has to be suited to my thing. And that is available today, but we got to make it work.
So last question for me. When you switch off the lights, you're just about to go to sleep and you switch off the lights, what's the one fear that you have in your mind? What's the one thing that you worry about?
Well, I worry that I'll be obsolete the next day.
You'll never be obsolete because you always...
I don't know, because, well, I'm not a spring chicken, Ajit. I'm not a spring chicken. So, and I don't have to go for a job to earn my living. I don't have to compete with people. But what matters to me is my life relevant to me and to others? Will I be looked upon as a relic? So am I abreast of the times? So what I sometimes fear is that I won't be able to catch up with people who are very, very bright and, were abreast to things. Will I be abreast? That's what worries me a little bit. Because, Ajit, I realized after all these years, the sun is going to rise in the morning and set in the evening, whatever happens to you or anybody else. Whoever is in power, that's going to. Nature has got a long, long time. And I also realized, Ajit, maybe sometime in June of last year, I woke up one day and realized I can't solve the world's problem anymore, and it's not my responsibility. Till then, I was believing I got to solve the world's problem. I got to make society better. I got to make the world better. It's putting unnecessary pressure on me, and I should run around like a mad guy. You know that. But that's suddenly I realized, look, I can't do it anymore. I've done my bit. I will do what I can, and I will lead my life productively and do whatever I can to make the world better. But it's not going to be a compelling narration for me. Of course, I'll not do anything wrong to hurt people, but it's not my responsibility. And that's a big relief. And that is wisdom.
Yeah.
That is wisdom.
Yeah.
Because, our lives are finite. We can do so much and do it well. And that is it. Yeah. And, live a life of reasonable contentment, right? Contentment and do things well. And that is it. Like the Gita says, do your duty and don't bother about the consequences, because you've done your duty, because the consequences are not within your control. I realized that in June, and now I'm much more happier, much more healthier, much more at ease with myself. So, very different.
Fantastic. There's a wonderful song by the Beatles called Hey Jude, and they should sing it for you. Hey Mohan, you've taken many sad songs and made them better. And you don't have to take the world on your shoulder. Thank you, Mohan. It's always a joy and a pleasure to really just feel your energy. I will now request Subbu, if you don't mind, to take some questions from the audience that have come in from the chat group. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Hi, Mohan. Good to see you after a long time. So I will go through some of the questions which have come. One of them is, how do you see technology evolving, having been in that industry, particularly when you look at, say, artificial intelligence? There are people at the ground level who are worried about jobs because of AI. But how do you look at this, and what kind of opportunities this could throw up for the youngsters?
Well, first of all, the move in technology is going to be very rapid, because today, please remember, we have almost unlimited computing power, because there is enough computing power through devices and through the cloud, right? Cloud has given you memory capacity. Second, the speed of computing has gone up dramatically. That iPhone 13 has got more computing power than the crazy supercomputer of 7 years back. That was somebody told me, and it's amazing to me, because we're always brought up to believe the supercomputers are unbelievably complex machines, but the iPhone seems to have more computing power and much faster. And the third thing is the huge amounts of data that have come up allow algorithms to run and do many things. And that is going to mean 60% of human activity can be done by machines. And then ultimately maybe 25-30% can be done, and it'll go up to 60-70%. And then we're going to have more and more automation and robotics. Because we already seen robots in the lab do extraordinary things. You've seen drones in the air. You've seen so many things, machines come up. You've seen autonomous cars and all that come up. And it's very close to reality. And that's going to impact all of us. And then finally, there's a huge amount of capital out there to accelerate innovation. The world has, the central banks have printed $25 trillion of currency over the last many years. And the interest rates are at an all-time low because there's surplus money floating around. And the money will make things volatile and also fund new innovation at a faster pace because there's much more money and people can afford to invest much more. So all that means society is going to change much more rapidly and India is not going to be left behind. But then, will it impact large number of people in India like the US? I think the US is getting impacted because we've seen the last 10 years, the jobs in the middle class, good paying jobs are gone because they're all getting automated. The rich are getting richer and there's a lot more $8 an hour, minimum wage jobs available, which are not getting filled. In India, we still have to build roads, we still have to build bridges, we still have to build houses, we still have to build power plants, and that's going to accelerate. We still have to build our cities, but that's going to create a lot more jobs. But Subbu, the jobs per unit growth in GDP is going to be lesser than 10 years ago. The job per unit rate of growth in GDP is going to be lesser in 10 years ago. And the only redeeming factor in India is the fact that for the last 30 years, we are producing the same number of babies every year, 2.5 crore babies every year. So today, children below 6 are only 11% of our population. They were 17% of population 20 years ago. So the number of people coming in the workforce is going to remain constant when the economy expands and goes up. So the percentage, it comes down. But we have a converse problem. We have 130 million people above the age of 60, and that's going to be 250 million by 2030. So on the flip side, we're going to have some other problem. So for younger people, I would say the opportunities are going to increase for the next 10, 12 years. After that, I don't want to comment. I don't know what is going to happen, but opportunities are going to be. But you need to have a different kind of skills, like I said earlier, to take advantage.
Thank you. You alluded to this huge divide in India between the north and the south. So if you were to come up with 3, let's say, very broad parameters to address it, how will you go about addressing this issue? Because it is quite a challenging issue when you really look at the details.
Well, what I would do, Subbu, is one, I would create a special structure for labor-intensive industries to locate in the north of the country, states whose per capita income is not more than 80% of India's per capita income. That means the states of Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal. So I would say a list of labor-intensive industries where labor intensity is very high. And I would say, if you relocate there, I will give you a subsidy per job based upon the payment of ESI, PF. So government already has a scheme of reimbursing. I'll say, for every job you create, I'll give you 2,000 rupees as a subsidy to create the job, because you have to use the money for training and to create jobs. And I would like labor-intensive industries to be located there much more than the south. For example, why should garment factories be in Bangalore? Bangalore has 5 lakh people, the garment factories, very expensive in Bangalore. Why should they be in Mumbai, right? COVID, a lot of people went back from Mumbai. They're probably living happier in UP than doing in the slums of Mumbai. And Mumbai is paying people less. I mean, because there's a huge flow of labor to Delhi, you're paying your drivers and housemaids less and exploiting them. They can't keep body and soul together with the kind of money. They're better off in the villages, right? And then you'll pay them more. You'll have more respect for people. So I think I will do that. Second, I will have a massive development program for the 7,000 small towns. Towns of 50,000, 100,000 population, to improve the facilities so the labor-intensive industries can come there and work in that place. And the third thing I would do is I would make sure that I will look at clusters of industries. We have industry clusters. Moradabad has got brass, and then Aligarh has got some kind of industry, right? You need, Bhiwandi has got handlooms. And look at all the clusters and help people improve skills, set up design centers to make better products on a common basis. For example, Tirupur has set up a lot of facilities on a common basis to help those people do all this, garments, etc. So I think I would do that. By doing these 3 things, I would create more jobs at the bottom of the pyramid and the middle of the pyramid. So the top of the pyramid, it grows to the top of the pyramid with a period of time. And I would prevent the migration of people down south. And that means the wages for people will go up and productivity will go up. Today, just because you can get a very cheap labor, we have no respect for people. And people are paid very less. Now with COVID, a lot of people went back to the villages. Now in the industry and others, people are realizing you want people, you got to pay them better. And you got to pay them better, right? And not make them live very poorly and exploit their poor conditions. I would do these three things.
And the flip side of this is, if currently the government is not addressing it, what do you think the reactions in the South will be in terms of the governments? What could they be doing to sort of stop these migrants coming in, or what kind of issues do you foresee?
For example, Yogi Adityanath, the CM of UP, has done that. He's getting more jobs for the migrants in UP. So he has done that precisely because, look, if your people stay in your own state, your consumption goes up, income level goes up, your skills go up, you create much better base, right? So you got to do that because remember, we live in a society where people are important. We don't live in a business. We live in a society. The end result of development should be improvement in the quality of life of people. I was very disappointed many years ago when I saw an article about Mamata Banerjee, then the railway minister, flagging off 2 train loads of young Bengalis to come to Bangalore to write the CET exam for engineering. I said, when I was growing up in the 70s, everybody went to Calcutta for higher education. That is the place for the best universities and colleges. Now you're sending your people to Bangalore. Why didn't you develop your own state? What have you done for the state? It's a bloody shame, right? I mean, West Bengal was at the forefront of what India was a long time ago, time of independence. So I would say that I would do a lot of things, and the people in the South are now realizing that they got to have high-tech industries, they got to have a different way of development, and they got to get better education and go into high gear. For example, Subbu, Bangalore's per capita income is $10,000. Okay, we can't have labor-intensive industry in Bangalore. Bangalore's got to be a very different city. Okay, even in Karnataka, the south Karnataka is much better than North Karnataka. Why? In the north, we got surplus labor and we got more land and water and power. In the south, we have lesser labor and we have to get labor from outside because, historically, industry has been the south, a lot of labor intensive. They don't have to be there because they become uncompetitive. So we need to have a different kind of policy to understand the dynamics of the growth of the economy and getting the right kind of policies. And to me, development of labor-intensive industry and urbanization north of India and more skill development, the most important thing to reduce social disparity and social tension.
Thank you. There's one question on what do you think of the new engineering courses in robotics and machine learning offered by many colleges? Without a base in software, do you think it is good for a fresher at 18 years to do these courses?
Subbu, my view is, you must read, you must have reading, writing, arithmetic, and coding as the essential skills for everybody. Devang Mehta, former president of NASCOM, is the roti, kapda, makan, or bandwidth. I'll say roti, kapda, makan, or band, our coding. So we must teach coding skills to every child. They don't have to become coders, at least they know about it, because that will help them work in the new kind of industry like 3D printing, do the small tweaks that are required, use technology, use AI, algorithms, and possibly use robotics and others, and change small things that can be done. I mean, they must learn the skills.
Okay. There's one question on how long did it take you to find success in life? And what are you working on currently as a project?
When I started my practice as CA, I used to earn 500 rupees a month for 3 years. I did good work. Nobody paid us money. I had 11 job offers to go to Bombay or Delhi because of the rank holder in the CA at all India level. But there were no jobs in my city of Bangalore. I didn't want to leave Bangalore. And then even when I was executive director of a leasing company, I got hardly anything because, those days people are paid less. It's only after I joined Infosys and sometimes in the late 90s that we actually got good salaries, decent salaries. And then we had the stock option plan, 1994. which I designed, which the government amended the laws 2 times to tax and could not tax, and finally went to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court said, you can't tax this structure. And I'm very proud of it. We had, 10,000 millionaires and all kind of stuff, $500 millionaires that time. Now people do a few and they jump up and down. A recent company listed in NASDAQ and said, employees are partners in the company. We heard it before, Subbu. It's been a long time, but it's okay. Let them talk about it. But I think the key thing is, all this has made many things, and it was a great experience for me. And for me personally, Subbu, I'm very lucky. You know why? My career started when India was opening up. So I saw the rise of a great country. I saw the rise of a great industry, the software industry. I participated. I saw the rise of a great company like Infosys. I participated, helped build it. So it's been a very enriching career, wonderful career. And now I am working in the area of innovation as an investor, as a mentor, as a fund manager in startups. And let me give you the good news. India has got 55,000 startups who have created about $400 billion of value with 69 unicorns employing 1.5 million people. And by 2025, we'll have more than 100,000 startups creating 150, 200 unicorns, 3.5 million jobs, and $1 trillion of value. So I'm working in a very exciting area. I see 2-3 companies coming to us for capital. 400 companies come to my office for capital. There are many funds in our office. And I meet young entrepreneurs. I live in Bangalore. Man, this is exciting, exhilarating. My life is more exciting than it was in Infosys.
Very good. Excellent. What advice would you give to someone who is trying to become an entrepreneur? And
well, my advice to him is, one, keep your passion and energy and keep at it. It takes time. Second, be frugal in what you do. Success is not going to come easily. Respect capital. Third, build a good team and enthuse people to work with you. Lead by example. Fourth, have the flexibility to change so that you don't get stuck in something which is passé, because things change very fast. And 5, learn to raise capital, because you have to raise a lot of capital to succeed in this game. And if you're not able to raise capital, then you're gone, because somebody else will come and start a similar enterprise and overtake you and become bigger before you turn over in your bed.
There's one on what stops India to create social platforms like WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, despite having an IT industry which manages enterprise software. What does it do?
Subbu, I've been asked this question since 1994. Why can't you create a Microsoft? Why can't you create a Google?
I agree. I remember in all analyst meeting, you would be asked these questions.
Subbu, US is a $21 trillion economy. We are a $3 trillion economy. Our local IT market is worth about 40 billion. The US local market is worth 2 trillion. So we lack the capital. We have the skills, we lack the capital, we lack the market, we lack the ecosystem to grow the giant companies. Whereas the US has all that. Now, the question I should ask is why Germany is not able to have a Google or a WhatsApp and only has a SAP with a $3.5 trillion of GDP. Why is Japan with $5 trillion not able to have any of the giant companies except a SoftBank, which uses its capital? So for those kind of companies to come, you need to have a large GDP. You need to have a lot of spending on technology. You need to have technology assimilation and risk-taking ability. That's coming now. That's coming now. So in the future, you'll see those kind of companies coming out from India, going overseas. For example, Freshworks, which got listed in the NASDAQ at $13 billion. It was an Indian company, SaaS company, which grew in India, built in India, could not find a market in India, relocated to the US, grew the market. Now they got a run rate of $450 million. If they stayed only in India, they couldn't have grown, right? Because the revenues are not here. So, these are the answers. It's not because of a lack of skills. In the US, we got 4.5 million Indians. They have started 67 unicorns. I got the list. India, we have got 69 unicorns. There are 450 unicorns in the United States, 300 in China. We got 69. We'll probably be 200 by 2025, right? But, we are a smaller economy. So we need to understand all these things. And because, the people who normally ask this question are people who don't understand how the world works. And many of them, Subbu, I'm sorry to say, very abusive. I've been called a cyber coolie. I've been called all kind of names because, oh, you work in services, you work in this. Man, of the top 10 service companies in the world, 5 are Indian. Of the top 5, 3 are Indian. They created $450 billion of value. Infosys created $100 billion of value. TCS nearly 180, 200 billion. Man, you should be proud of them.
Thank you, Mohan, for that wonderful answers.
Waiting for Winnie, I think, to come on.
Yeah. I think most of the questions I had asked, if Vinny can take it over from here.
Sure. Thanks, Subbu. Thank you, Mr. Pai, for your insights into what new India could look like and how we can be future ready for it. Mr. Pai, you've committed capital, talent, and time to address multiple social issues via Akshaya Patra. And I think it's truly inspiring to see the impact of its midday meal program. In fact, I've had the privilege to actually visit one of their kitchens in Hubli. Now, in terms of what the next 20 years for the social sector could look like, I think SEBI's remarkable move to launch a social stock exchange will definitely be a game changer. Also, the growing popularity of the ESG framework, mapping ESG to parameters, ESG parameters to multiple SDGs, and of course, the existing CSR law will provide the much needed boost to the social sector. And I completely agree with the point you made earlier that to actually create and see impact, there is a need for a more collaborative approach between the government, private sector, civil society, and the citizens at large. For over 2 decades, Helper NGO has been striving to increase transparency in the social sector, helping donors make informed donations, and most importantly, offering easy solutions to support NGOs. We are proud to present to you our latest initiative for encouraging individuals to support NGOs working tirelessly towards the UN SDGs, which is this HYNGO band. May I please request all the panelists to wear the HYNGO band and pledge their support? Thank you. Allow me to quickly share my screen to further explain HYNGO.
In the meantime, Winnie, I think you have another idea that came through from Mr. Pai. Mohan said now you have to reach out to 5 crore Indians and do direct benefit transfers using your platform of Helper NGO.
Yeah, if 1 crore Indians adopt 5 families, or 5 crore Indians adopt 1 family each, we'll solve India's problem.
Correct. That's right. There you go, Winnie. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. That's the next product that's going to come out from Helper NGO after HYNGO.
So in fact, Mr. Pai, earlier when we were mentioning about the DBT that should actually be happening, during COVID, that's one of the main programs that we were supporting. We did DBTs to low-income families that we had identified to, actually make sure that they get the money in their accounts. Because everyone was doing dry ration and, essential kits distribution and all of that. But I think DBTs was one of our key programs, and that's what the beneficiaries really appreciated. Okay, moving on. By purchasing this HYNGO band, you will be contributing to the corpus we are building to support vetted NGOs. All you have to do is purchase the HYNGO band, which will be packaged in a multi-purpose khadi pouch for just 200 rupees. And we've shared the link from where you can purchase the HYNGO band in the chat box. Proceeds from the sale of these bands will be donated to charities, and not only will you receive 50% tax deduction, but also program reports for complete transparency so that you can actually review how your donations are being utilized. Last evening, we launched our Did You HYNGO social media challenge with Ronnie Screwvala. We urge you all to participate in this challenge by following these 3 easy steps. Click a photo of you wearing the band, post it on social media with a hashtag, and tag 3 or more friends to take on the challenge. It's as simple as that. For us to be future ready, we need you to HYNGO. So the question is, did you HYNGO today? Because I did. Thank you once again, Mr. Pai, for sparing time to speak with us and sharing valuable insights. Thank you, Ajit, for moderating the session, and Subbu for the Q&A round. Thank you to all the attendees for signing up and attending this session.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.